The year is 1967, and back in the 1960s, the Hugo Award was the most prestigious award given in all of science fiction. This, of course, was before the great Hugo controversy of 2024. That being said, in the year of our Lord, 1967, there were two novels that were written that were standout novels, both of which were nominated for the Hugo Award. But of course, as it is, only one can win that prestigious award. And I'm here today to tell you, Hugo's fucked up, baby. All right, real quick, before we go any further into this video, a little bit of backstory on this particular video. I started reading the book, The Flowers for Algernon, and I always have heard quite good things about this particular book. And I very quickly realized that this book is just as fantastic as everybody says it is. And I got to thinking while I was reading, I think this won the Hugo, didn't it? So a quick Google search later, and I found out, no, it did not win the Hugo Award. Yes, it was nominated, but it lost out to The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Then, me being the weirdo that I am, I go to Half Price Books, I don't know, once every couple of weeks or so. And if I see a book that I think I want to read, and it's like $6 or $7 or $8, I'll probably just grab it, throw it on the shelf back here, and get to it eventually. So, when I'm reading Flowers for Algernon, I realized it lost to The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and I said, I think I got that on the shelf. And I looked, and of course I do. So, guess what I read next? The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. So now, having the hindsight of read these both back to back and knowing which one won and which one didn't, which one's the better book? And I know what you're thinking. What does this guy even know about the 1967 Hugo Awards? And the answer to that is, well, nothing. And who is this guy? Essentially just an asshole with a camera and an opinion, but that has never stopped me before. And to be fair, the entirety of the research that I've done for this video includes reading the two books in question. So at this point in the video, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to provide basically a mini spoiler-free review of both of the books in question. Then, after that, I will give my opinion as to what I think is the better book, whether or not I believe that they actually made a mistake in the choosing of the Hugo Award winner, and just a slight bit of speculation as to why I think they may have landed on the decision that they landed on. Flowers for Algernon is a speculative fiction book about an experiment to unlock the brain's potential, possibly unlocking unlimited intelligence. This experiment is initially performed on a mouse named Algernon. After the experiment appears to be successful, they go ahead and they approve this for human trials. Then they select a nice, kindly man with some severe mental handicaps as the first human test subject. From there, the book follows this particular person through all of the tests that they're going to do to them, all the experiments that they're going to do to him, and we follow him through what ends up being the repercussions of this. We see what the procedure does to him mentally, we see what the procedure does to his intelligence level, we see what the procedure does to his emotional level, his emotional maturity, his emotional intelligence. All of this comes into play and becomes major factors in the story as this proceeds to happen to him. And everybody in the story is affected by this. Everybody that he knows, everybody that he used to know. The effects and the consequences of what happens to this man are very far-reaching. And it cannot be understated that this is a very tough read on an emotional level. Nothing really major happens in the book as far as like event-wise, but the emotions that are tapped into, the ideas, the concepts, and the emotions that are tackled throughout the book, especially when it comes to mental health, mental handicaps, and the way people treat other human beings in a not very nice way from beginning to end. It is just, it's so difficult sometimes to read this story and not just some hard topics will be tackled and discussed, and you just kind of want to cry every goddamn page of the story. It is just very emotionally taxing to read this book. And to be quite honest, I don't want to say much of anything else about this book for fear of spoiling anything that happens in the book, just because it is truly a wonderful read. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you go read it just to experience just what this book is capable of achieving on an emotional level and on an intelligent level, on a philosophical level of the ideas that the things that it's going to force you to think about as you read the book is quite impressive. Now, moving on to our next contestant. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and this book is basically a what-if novel. And in essence, it's what if the American Revolution happened in space? Like, for real. The moon has been colonized, and there are people that live there now, and it is a colony of the planet Earth. Earth has like a government. That government rules the colony of the moon, and it rules them kind of harshly, and the colonies get treated unfairly, and, they don't get proper treatment by Earth, and they're restrictive and oppressive, and it's just a real mean, bad government situation that's being ruled by a government that's too far away. They don't understand the moon or the moon's people, and then the moon is going to have to basically form a type of revolt. Maybe one would call it a revolution against that big evil government from across the sea of space, we'll call it. And essentially it is, what if the American Revolution happened again, but this time it was in space, and it was the moon, and it was the Earth. And I know I make that sound extremely reductive of the plot of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and it's, in a sense, that's kind of unfair to the book, to be honest, but that's essentially what it is. And that's not to diminish the quality or the value of the book, because it was a very good book. It was a very enjoyable read. I had quite a good time with the book, but it just didn't feel like it rose to the same level as The Flowers for Algernon did. And now, to be fair warning, this Moon is a Harsh Mistress book was written by the same guy who wrote Starship Troopers, the one that wasn't a satire. So that might give you an idea of the kind of politics and political leanings that the author may have had when he was writing the book. Pretty strong libertarian ideas on display in the book as you go through it. Although, in all fairness, I didn't feel like it was overly preachy at all. Really, it was just kind of like a presentation of certain people's ideas, and opposing viewpoints were allowed. So it wasn't like anything overly in your face, and it didn't feel oppressive to read at all. No, I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, all in all, at the end of the day, I feel that Flowers for Algernon was just a much stronger book and a much better read in general. The themes involved were so much deeper. The thoughts that it was challenging you to have as you read the book were so much grander, more immersive, just like I said, just bigger, deeper ideas. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress was a good, fun science fiction book, and more, like I said, just like a fun what-if book. But that just doesn't hold the inherent philosophy and the depth that Flowers for Algernon did as a book and as a read. And if you're looking for something that's going to hit you on a much deeper level and a much more emotional level, then Flowers for Algernon is clearly the way to go. And I know at the end of the day, this is nothing more than an opinion piece, and it is my opinion. But if I were absolutely forced backed into a corner to say, if you had to pick, which book would it be? I would say it would be Flowers for Algernon by a lot. It's not even one of those situations where it's like, Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I liked Algernon better, but they were both really good books. I could see why they picked The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. It's not even close. It's like so far above and beyond that I was shocked and confused at how they even came to this decision. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I think I might have a couple ideas. So what does this boil down to? I think The Moon is a Harsh Mistress was... Why is that so hard to say? The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Anyway, 1. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress was written by Robert Heinlein. He is considered to be, I want to say his nickname was the Dean of science fiction. He is one of the granddaddies of all of science fiction. He has been nominated for more Hugo Awards than any other author in history. He has won more Hugo Awards than any other author in history. So when he puts his hat into the ring, he's a big fucking deal. Keyes, on the other hand, is a nobody. He's written nothing. I think this was his first novel ever, if I'm not mistaken. Then you add to that Keyes actually submitted this exact story, The Flowers for Algernon, as a short story a couple of years before, and he did win the Hugo Award for that. So now we have a real big heavyweight going up against a relative nobody, and that relative nobody just won the Hugo Award for that exact same story. And on top of that, Flowers for Algernon is going in as a science fiction book, and yes, it is science fiction, and we are doing science fiction-y things, but it is very lightweight in the science fiction department. It almost doesn't even feel like a science fiction book. We run a science experiment and then follow it, and that's about it. It's not super duper in your face science fiction. And like I said, he just won it for this exact story, just in short story form, not novel form. So I feel like we have a huge heavyweight versus a relative nobody. Then we have very solid sci-fi versus, it's kind of sci-fi. Then on top of that, I feel like there were probably some people sitting in the room that was like, do we really want to give the exact same story 2 Hugo Awards in a row? I think all of those kind of combined for them to go, and just give it to The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, even though it is an inferior book. And objectively speaking, I think Flowers for Algernon should have taken it. I feel like it's the better book, and I don't give a shit that it would have won it twice in a row. It deserved it. At least more than The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. There are some other books on that list that I have not read. You know what? Maybe one of those is even better. Maybe I should just go read all the fucking books written that year so I don't look like an idiot when this video goes live. But you know what? That's not going to happen. Also, speaking of the Hugo Awards, there's some other years that I'm highly skeptical of. I haven't personally read The Dispossessed yet, but I'm very suspicious about the 1975 Hugo Awards as well. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.